Well, if you've thought about using raw cat food, you've probably worried about bacteria. Some of the big cat food companies seem determined to make you worry about bacteria. But how good is raw cat food? Is the bacteria a problem? And why or why not? I'll get to that as soon as I say I am Forrest Poston. This is Hyperthyroid Cats. I am not a vet. And keep in mind that while most of the items here are focused on hyperthyroidism, a lot of the information does apply to most cats or all cats. And please share, subscribe, tell your friends, make comments, click the thumbs up, click the notification bell. All right, raw cat food. I've seen a lot of people who say, well, I'd like to use raw cat food. My vet says not to because of the danger of various types of bacteria. And of course, that's always a somewhat legitimate concern when you're talking about any kind of food, human, cat, or otherwise, raw or otherwise. And, well, if it were as much of a problem as some seem to think or want you to think, then there'd be a whole lot of cats dying. I mean, tens of thousands of cats would be dying because they, eat raw cat food. But they're not dying. As I might say, they're living in droves. And living well. Raw cat food really is a good raw cat food. Is good for cats because they are obligate carnivores. It's fairly simple. But how can you make sure there's no bacteria? How do the companies do it? I didn't know until recently. I'd wondered about it but hadn't looked into it. Well, now, of course, the way most companies currently use, and it's in some respects the simplest, is good old-fashioned cleanliness. But that means not only making sure your factory is clean, it means controlling the entire process, including sourcing. You only buy from places you know are well run, which includes, keeping the conditions, such that bacteria is not likely to grow, keeping things clean. And if you have cleanliness from the beginning to the end, you don't get the dangerous bacteria. That's fairly simple, but of course it means if something goes wrong, there's a danger. So, you're depending on the companies really staying on top of things. There is an additional method. It's actually been around for a fairly long time, hasn't been used by that many companies, but is now being used by more. It's called high pressure processing, and it is exactly what it sounds like. They use relatively expensive equipment to put the food under very, very, very high pressure. And pressure destroys the problematic bacteria, including some things that cause food to spoil. So we eliminate the negative bacteria, we delay spoilage without affecting essentially the healthy bacteria and without changing the nutritional value of the food, which cooking does. Cooking is good in many ways, but cooking does change the food. Not with a lot of the nutritional factors, I'm not sure, if the nutritional content they claim is before or after cooking, and it does make a difference. Now, I don't want to eat my hamburgers uncooked, but it does change things. Now, there are really two reasons why HPP, high pressure processing, isn't used most of the time or all the time. One is expense. As I mentioned, the equipment to do it is expensive, and it does add time to the process. And, well, we do have the old saying, time is money. It does cost more for the company to do it this way. And the other reason is, well, when they first started using this, oh, and by the way, it's used on human foods as well. A lot of foods that you buy are, put through high pressure processing. They just don't mention it. But when they started using it, well, they really didn't stop and think enough about basic physics. Pressure creates heat. If you just strictly put lots of pressure on the food, it actually starts cooking the food. And then you get all of the potential issues with cooking, changing the chemistry of the food, and you lose some of the benefits of it being raw. Well, that kind of, defeats the point. But if you control the pressure, the amount of pressure, control the time of the pressure, and control the temperature of the water that encases the interior shell where the food is, placed, then you keep the heat down. Therefore, the food goes through the pressure, does not, get too hot for too long, doesn't cook. And some companies were using this process for years before they figured that out. Nobody just stopped to check and didn't stop to think. Even the best of us is guilty of that at times. But since the process had issues early, companies didn't use it. Because they were good companies. They didn't want to use a process that wasn't achieving the goals that they wanted. Now that they have learned to do it right, more companies are starting to do it. Some companies do it with some of their foods. Some companies do it with all their foods. I think Stella and Chewy's does it with all of their foods, both the frozen and the freeze-dried. I think Steve's, it's also called Quest, does it with at least some of their food. But if you are really worried about bacteria in raw food and the idea of trusting a company to be clean from beginning to end isn't enough, consider a company that uses high pressure processing, and it's worth giving it a shot. Raw food can help with many health issues. It's simply better nutrition for cats, especially compared to some of the foods that are out there. Because let's face it, some of these companies aren't that picky about their processing, about their sourcing in particular. They figure if they cook it enough, it'll take care of any problems. And I know with some companies, you will get batches of food that are radically different from previous batches in taste, based on cat's reaction and smell, which, when a human can smell the difference, you gotta wonder. So, just because food is cooked doesn't mean you can trust the food or the company. So partly I say try to find a company that you believe you can trust. Unfortunately, companies do change hands, so you got to keep up with things. Anyway, the main point is raw food from a good company is reliable, and high pressure processing can help take care of those extra worries about bacteria. So maybe you can give it a try and we'll see how it goes. Remember, anytime you transition from a food or to a food, do it slowly. Over a week or two is the usual ideal. And try just putting a little bit of the raw food on top of or mixed in with the food you're already using and work from there. All right, good luck. I hope you'll check out some of the other videos. If you try the raw food, I certainly hope it goes well for you. Remember, it can be a matter of finding the right flavor, the right textures of the raw foods vary erratically. Or the right company, all sorts of factors. Don't give up too easily. And raw food, cost is a factor, I realize that. But also keep in mind that overall cats don't need as many ounces of a good raw food as they do of a canned or kibble. All right, now it's time to move on. I hope you made it this far through the video. Thank you if you did, and I'll see you guys later.